catch me talking about the aerodynamics and the cambers of the tires and all that goes into that. You walked into our Indy 500 instructional video, which I could probably do if I needed to, but that's okay. Welcome back to Wednesday Night Bible Study. We are doing our study on some non-canonical Gospels. And last week, we did the Gospel of Thomas. Had a grand old time with that. This week, I thought we'll do the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which is a totally different book. It is not connected in any way. It is one of the, apart from the name, it is one of the couple of non-canonical Gospels that tells the story of what Jesus was like as a child, right? This is the question that you always think about, right? Because the only stories we have, we get birth, and then in Luke, we get one story when he was 12, and then he's 30, right? So what was it like trying to raise Jesus, right? What kind of a kid was Jesus? Well, if we believe the Infancy Gospel, not a great one. Well, I mean, imagine parenting Jesus. You know, that's going to really be a challenge. So, what? So,
especially for Joseph.
Right. Well, yes.
You're not my real dad.
That's right. My real dad would make me do this. Well, interestingly enough, we'll see in this gospel, Joseph does not come off great in this gospel. So, Mary does, but Joseph doesn't in this, which is interesting. As I say, along with the Proto-Evangelium of James, and we're going to talk about the Proto-Evangelium of James pretty soon. It's probably, I would say, it's probably the most significant of our non-canonical Gospels in that it had probably the most lasting effect on interpretation and church tradition. And we're going to see some church traditions that came out of that book that are kind of a big deal. This is not that book. This is the Infancy Gospel of Thomas doesn't have that kind of impact. It is usually dated to the late 2nd century. The oldest extant copy is in the 4th century. So that's pretty early, really, to have that extant copy like that. We don't have quite that many. We don't have a complete Bible from that close in time, so pretty significant. It appears to have been a very popular read, and I say that because there are copies in multiple languages. People took time to translate this Infancy Gospel, and it was found over a wide geographical area. So it appeared to be a very popular, at least at the popular level, as opposed to at the bishop theologian level. At the bishop theologian level, it was not a popular book. But for the common folks, they apparently liked this. Early versions, the earliest versions we have of this manuscript are anonymous, which is interesting because usually in the early version, as I said before, the canonical Gospels are anonymous, but the fake Gospels always put a name in to sort of buy authority. Right? The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary. But this one was anonymous in its early recensions. It's later tradition that actually puts the name Thomas on it. Thomas the Israelite, with no other explanation as to who that's supposed to be. There are all sorts of traditions about Thomas, that this is Thomas the disciple, that Thomas was the twin brother of Jesus, that Thomas took missions to the east and went to India, and there are many traditions about that. None of them in Scripture. We only have the Western movement of the church in Scripture, the book of Acts. We don't have an Eastern movement. We know there was. We just don't have the detail on that. But which Thomas the Israelite this is, I assume that's the Thomas we're supposed to be thinking of, is the traditional Thomas that's associated with all these other traditions. So, questions on that as we get going? Yes, sir.
Is this the only gospel of Jesus as a child?
Proto-Evangelium has a little bit. It's more focused on Mary. Bullet point 1 would say, these are our two. Yes, it's okay, Bob. Bob feeling silly because he missed bullet point 1. That's okay. These things happen. These things happen. You're red all the way up. That's impressive. Other questions, even if they're silly, I'll take them. We're good? Okay. So, as I said, it was popular among the people, because it was spread a lot of places, but not popular among the clergy. And so Irenaeus, in his document Against Heresies, calls it out. He actually calls out a quote from this gospel and talks about how wrong it is. And other church fathers talk about how wrong this gospel is. So the Popular with the people. The Orthodox early church leaders didn't approve of it. Remember, I put Orthodox in quotes because we don't have a formal orthodoxy yet that's formed. So, but what becomes Orthodox Christianity? Nancy? That was your question? Yeah, okay, yeah. You can't have an Orthodox till you have a council that makes it Orthodox, and we haven't had that yet. But what becomes Orthodox doesn't like Thomas. Yeah. Okay. Jesus in the infancy gospel of Thomas. The story is between Jesus' ages from 5 to 12. Most of the stories are 5 and 7, and then the 12-year-old story is borrowed from the Gospel of Luke. We'll see that in a little bit. It's fascinating because Jesus is in full possession of all the divine powers. So it's a 5-year-old with all the powers of Jesus, okay? And very high Christology. Jesus is not human-like at all. This is very much super Jesus here. This is godlike Jesus here, with the exception that he's kind of a brat, right? Give a 5-year-old God powers and, you'll see what you get here in a minute, but yeah, this is where we are. That's my word. Just so you know. I think the scholars like to use the French, he's an enfant terrible. So, there probably is. It's probably a German word for that too, I'm sure. It's about this long. So, anyway. Okay, let's look at some of the stories here. Let's talk of the prologue. I, Thomas the Israelite, thought it necessary to make known to all the Gentile brothers and sisters all the things done by our Lord Jesus Christ in the village of Nazareth after he was born in our region of Bethlehem. This is the beginning. This part is left off of the earliest manuscripts, but it's found in other copies. So we don't know how early this tradition was stuck onto it. But, I mean, it's an early tradition, but it wasn't original to the earliest manuscript. So, let's look at my honestly, there's a lot of good stories in here. My favorite has to be the first one, I think. The child Jesus was 5 years old. After it rained, he was playing at the ford of a flowing stream, and stirring up the dirty waters, he gathered them into pools and made them clean and excellent, ordering them by word alone and not ordering them by deed. He spoke the waters into a pool and cleaned the muddy waters so that it's now fresh and drinkable. That's pretty cool. Then, having taken soft clay from the mud, he formed 12 sparrows from it. But it was the Sabbath when he did these things, and many children were with him. So he's making sparrows on the Sabbath. This is never going to go well, right? This is working, clearly. So what do? How do you not get caught? Brilliant move by Jesus here. A certain Jew saw the child Jesus with the other children doing these things. He went to Joseph, his father, and slandered the child Jesus, saying that he made clay on the Sabbath, which isn't permissible, and formed 12 sparrows. Joseph went and rebuked him, Jesus, saying, "Why are you doing these things on the Sabbath?" Jesus clapped his hands, ordering the birds with a shout in front of all, and said, "Go, take flight like living beings." And the sparrows, taking flight, went away squawking. Brilliant move at getting rid of the evidence. Just make them real birds. It's really a good move, I think. Right? So you don't get in trouble for making them on the Sabbath if they're actually alive. So, great move, isn't it?
If he had joined the witnesses in the word, that would have been
Well, we're getting there. This is the best of the story, I think, at this point. You'll see what I mean in a minute. That's why I said I think this is my favorite one, because at least this one has some cleverness to it, right? You're going to get in trouble for working on the Sabbath. You destroy the evidence by making them alive. It's pretty clever. So, I love the looks on your faces. This is the best part. This is why I love teaching these Gospels. You guys have great looks on your faces. So, all right, so what happens? Having seen this, the Pharisee was amazed and reported it to all his friends. And the son of Annas, the high priest, said to him, Jesus, "Why are you doing such thing on the Sabbath?" And having taken a willow twig, he destroyed the pools and drained the water which Jesus had gathered and dried up their gatherings. So this bratty son of Annas has now screwed up the pool that Jesus had just made. So, how do you think Jesus is going to handle this? Having seen what happened, Jesus said to him, "Your fruit will have no root, your shoot will be withered like a scorched branch in a violent wind," and immediately the child withered away. Oh my God. So, stop messing with his play area. That's not cool. Yeah.
I just realized how that sounds like that old Twilight Zone episode.
Where nobody wants to mess with Billy Mummy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's probably the creepiest of all of the Twilight Zone episodes. And that is a contest. If you're going to pick creepiest Twilight Zone episode, yeah, but that one with Billy Mummy and the kid, ugh, creepy. Yeah. That's not a bad parallel. So I'll be honest. Oh, we haven't even gotten to his teachers yet. So, anything you want to talk about there in their story? Nancy, anything there you see that you want me to preach on? Anything?
Sure. Let's do it. How did anybody ever believe this?
Well, this is a good question. I want you to think about this as we go through these, because I'm going to ask this question again at the end. What are they wrestling with? Right? Why are they telling these stories? What is it that they are trying to think about Jesus that felt they needed to tell him this way? What is it that they are wrestling with about God, about Jesus, about the faith? What's at stake for them in these stories? How is it you hear this story and go, yeah, that absolutely, right? What is it that's going on? So think about that as we keep going. So I'm not answering it yet. Please, Anna.
So the other kid, he gonna be in trouble because he was doing some sort of work, drain the water.
Yeah, the other kid didn't get in trouble for draining the water. Yeah, he didn't, did he? Yeah, we should have. Well, he got what's coming to him, I guess. So, it's kind of hard to pile on at that point, I guess. So, yeah. I don't have a whole lot of answers for you tonight, but we're going to have fun looking at the questions. I can promise you that. From there, he was going with his father Joseph, and someone running struck his shoulder. And Jesus said to him, "Cursed be you because of your leader." And immediately he died. So don't bump into Jesus while you're running through town. That's not good, because he killed him because he bumped into him. So that wasn't nice, bumping into him like that. And the people who saw that he died immediately cried out and said, "From where was this child born?" And that his word becomes deed. And when his parents of the dead child saw what had happened, they blamed Joseph, his father, saying, "From wherever you have this child, you can't live with us in this village. If you want to be here, teach him to bless and not to curse, because our child has been taken away from us." Joseph said to Jesus, "Why do you say such things? And they suffer and hate us." And the child said to Joseph, "Since you know wise words, you're not ignorant of where they came from. They were spoken about a 5-year-old, and they won't be raised, and these will receive their punishment." And immediately those accusing him became blind. So the people that were mad at him now for killing the child are blind in this. So that fixed it.
I feel a lot better now.
Oh, don't worry, we're building. We're getting there. Told you he was a brat. And Jesus took Jesus' ear and pulled hard. Joseph took Jesus' ear and pulled hard. That is, yeah. Well, after seeing what Jesus has been doing, I got to say, he's taking his life in his hands here. And Jesus said to him, "It's enough for you seek and find me, and not beyond that to scourge me by having taken a natural ignorance. You haven't clearly seen me, why I'm yours. Look, I've been subdued before you." So you don't have any idea who I am. Why I'm allowing you to scourge me in this, because I don't have to. Just so you know. Thank you, Jesus. So a teacher, this is right after this, a teacher named Zacchaeus was standing there, hearing Jesus say these things to his father, Joseph. He was very amazed, and he said to Joseph, "Come, give him to me, brother, so that he may be taught letters, so that he may know all knowledge and learn to love those his own age, and honor old age, and respect elders, so he may acquire a yearning for children, teaching them in return." Here, if I could teach him, he won't be such a brat. Let me help raise your kid. It's always the other people that can raise somebody else's kid, isn't it? It just seems we're always experts. Somebody else's kid. Joseph said to the teacher, "And who can control this child and teach him? Don't think of him as a small person, brother." It's a great line. You don't think of him as a small person. Oh, goodness. Anyway, but the man was undeterred. The child Jesus looked at them and said to the teacher this speech, "Being a teacher comes naturally to you, but you're a stranger to the name with which you're named, because I'm outside of you and I'm within you on account of the nobility of my birth in the flesh. But you, a lawyer, don't know the law." And he said to Joseph, "When you were born, I existed, standing beside you, so that as father you may be taught a teaching by me which no one else knows or can teach, and you will bear the name of salvation." So I know more than both of y'all and have been around for a while. Yes, Caleb? It helps if you're God, apparently. Yeah, that's the only answer. And how does a 5-year-old talk like that is a great question. Yeah. So, The Jews cried out and said, "Oh, new and incredible wonder, the child, perhaps 5 years old, and oh, what words he says." Caleb said that just now. That's Caleb's response. "We've never known such words. No one, neither lawyer or Pharisee, has spoken like this child," or any other 5-year-old we've ever met. Yes. The child answered them and said, "Why are you amazed? Or rather, why don't you believe the things I've said to you? The truth is that I, who was created before this world, know accurately when you were born, and your fathers, and their fathers, and all the people who heard this were speechless, no longer able to talk to them. But he went up to them, skipped around, and said, 'I was playing with you, because I know you're small-minded and amazed with small things.'" I love this appears to be the cringiest of the Gospels for you all, as I watch you. Oh. I'm having a grand time this evening, I gotta say. Just you guys have made it worth it just for the facial expressions. Thank you for that. I promise you can look this one up. It's not even good Calvin and Hobbes. It's bratty Calvin and Hobbes, even worse. Now, when they seemed comforted by the child's encouragement, "You're small-minded and amazed with small things?" Boy, he pegged us. Anyway, well, that's fair. That's fair. Now they seemed comforted by the child's encouragement. The teacher said to his father, "Come, bring him into the school. I'll teach him letters." This is unusual. Most teaching was done outside. They didn't have like inside teaching. So I don't know what this means. I don't know if this is a different tradition from a different place. But it's weird that he would say, "Come into a building to be taught," because that's not the way teaching usually was done. It was usually taught outside. So, when the child's angry, in this case, it clearly, yeah, maybe. Most of the interpreters I've seen think it's a building and mention that point that I just brought up. I don't know for sure what word that might be. Does school mean building? Good question. When the child's anger had ceased, I guess we missed that part, he said all the letters by himself from the Alpha to the Omega very skillfully. And looking straight at the teacher, he said, "If you don't know the nature of the Alpha, how can you teach another the Beta? Hypocrite. If you know, first teach me the Alpha, then I'll trust you to speak of the Beta." Then he began to teach the teacher about the first element, and he couldn't say anything to him. He goes on to speak eloquently about the shape and the nature of the letter Alpha. And the legs it stands on, and the crossbeam, and the dance it does. And he does this whole thing on Alpha. And the teacher he hits him, but he has no thoughts about how to fix the situation. And so he sends him back to Joseph because he doesn't know what to do with him. The second teacher doesn't get anywhere with him. His third teacher decides about the only way he's going to get any place is to compliment him and tell him he doesn't need to worry about anything. And so that's what he did. The third teacher tried to teach him by telling him he was good and didn't need to worry about anything, which apparently was the best way to handle Billy Mummy in the Twilight Zone. Yeah.
So what language is this written in?
This is Greek. Yeah. Yeah. Alpha. Yeah. Alpha and Beta.
So what? Jesus grew up speaking Aramaic?
Tradition would believe that Jesus grew up speaking Aramaic and likely knew Greek for business.
He must have known Hebrew too.
We assume he would know Hebrew, yeah. I mean, if you know Aramaic, you can get by in Hebrew. Yeah. I mean, it's like Spanish and Portuguese, my understanding, that the language is close enough that if you know one, you can follow the other. Yeah. They're of all the Romance languages, Spanish and Portuguese probably the closest of the two, and Aramaic and Hebrew are very much like that. If you give me enough time, I can translate Aramaic, but it takes a while because the grammar is a little bit different. They have a little bit different verb tenses. The forms take a little bit different way, but I can follow it a little bit. Daniel is in Aramaic. Esther is in Aramaic. Parts of it are in Aramaic. Most of the Bible's in Hebrew, but yeah. But Aramaic was the language that was spoken, but Greek was the lingua franca. If you want to do business in Sepphoris, if you're living in Nazareth, you're going to go to Sepphoris for business, you're going to need to speak Greek because that's what everybody spoke. Especially in the north, much more international, and Greek would be the only language that you could make sure you could communicate in. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Okay. Just run over here. Therefore, brother Joseph, lead him away with salvation into your house, because this child is a great thing. This is the third teacher speaking. Whether a God or an angel or whatever else I might say, I don't know. I take him back. I don't know what to do with him. He's God, he's an angel, he's something. But I certainly can't teach him, because this is what we got. So he ran through 3 teachers in this gospel. And he only didn't kill the third one because he told him how great he was. So, well, didn't curse the third one anyway. Child Jesus laughed and said, now may the barren bear fruit, the blind see, the foolish in heart find understanding, that I'm here from above, so that I might deliver those below and call them up, just as the one who sent me to you has ordered me. And so immediately all who had fallen under his curse were saved, and no one dared to provoke him from then on. So the blind people, the dead kid, everything's fixed. We hit the reset button. Everybody's fine now. The blind can see and the dead can walk, even though Jesus was the one that blinded them and killed them. So, reset. Everything's cool. It's like the end of a sitcom, right? Everything's back to normal at the beginning of the show. So we're all good. Happy ending. Questions I can answer? That would limit.
So what was this used for?
This is filling in the gap. This is devotional. This was included in some collections of religious readings. It was into the 14th century. People had copies of this and thought of it that there's art. The most common artistic depiction is Jesus and the sparrows. So if you see Jesus with a dozen sparrows, this is where they get that. Yeah, that's a pretty common thing. So, yep. I do love it. Everybody's fine now. So. Happy ending. But now comes some more fun stories. Again, after many days, Jesus was playing with the other children on a certain roof of an upstairs room. One of the children fell and died. The other children saw this and went to their houses, and they left Jesus alone. Boy, talk about just leaving him out to dry on that one. That's just rough. And the parents of the child who died came and accused Jesus, which you got in fairness, right? The past would show you this probably what happened. Said, you pushed him. You pushed down our child. She said, I didn't push him down. And they were raging and shouting, and Jesus came down from the roof, stood beside the body, and cried out in a loud voice, saying, Zeno, Zeno, because this was his name, rise and say whether I pushed you down. And he rose and said, no, sir. When you need a witness, you got to go to the source. So, perfect. Here's the part that troubles me about this. And they saw and were amazed. And again, Jesus said to him, fall asleep. Did he die again? Did he die again? I don't know. But I think he might have died again. That he just woke up to defend Jesus and then re-died. That's not cool. But the parents of the child praised God and worshiped the child Jesus. So, cool. Or maybe he just needed to rest. Maybe that was it. After falling off the roof and being dead, he just needed, take a break, fall asleep. Maybe. I don't know. I think he died again. I do. I don't know. So, you starting to understand why I said Jesus is kind of a brat in this gospel? Yeah.
I think these stories are telling you Jesus weird stories. I mean, there are some true stories, and then I see some common thing going on with the 5 years old Jesus and common people when we have God's power.
Okay. The misuse of God's power or learning to use God's power.
Upset me and I just kill him or something.
Yeah. Yep. You know, that's not a bad read of that, Anna.
This could be on Saturday Night Live.
This is, and people would think it was heretical and not realize it's based in a 2nd century Jewish Christian tradition. By the way, most likely not a Jewish text. They don't seem to have any doesn't seem to be having a Jewish influence in it at all. It seems to be very Greek, not necessarily Gnostic like we saw last week, but at least not aware of Jewish culture. I love this one too. And the child Jesus was about 7 years old, and his mother Mary sent him to fill up water. But there was a great crowd at the water cistern, and the pitcher was struck and broke. He didn't kill anybody, though. Jesus spread out the cloak he was wearing, filled it with water, and carried it to his mother. So he used his robe and filled it up. I bet Jesus could wheel a barrel of smoke. I bet this Jesus, if he can take a thing of water from his cloak, he can probably wheel a barrel of smoke. I think he could. So Mary saw what sign Jesus had done, kissed him, saying, Lord, my God, bless our child, because they were afraid lest someone bewitch him. So,
He sounds bewitched.
he's a little bit bewitching already. Might be a little late on this. Yeah. Oh, what a story. The last story that we have in the infancy gospel of Thomas looks a lot like Luke 2:41-53, where they left him in the temple, where he got away from them and was in the temple. And finally, Mary catches up to him. They go back. I mean, the first part of the story reads just like that. And then picks up in verse 3. His mother said, "Child, what have you done to us? Look, we've been searching for you in pain and grieving." And Jesus said, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know it was necessary for me to be in the place of my Father?" And the scribes and the Pharisees said to Mary, "You're the mother of this child?" So this is new. She said, "I am." And they said to her, "Blessed are you that the Lord God has blessed the fruit of your womb, because we've never seen such wisdom of praise and glory of virtue." They didn't know the earlier stories. And Jesus stood up and followed his mother from there and was obedient to his parents, and she treasured all these things, pondering them in her heart. And Jesus advanced in wisdom and maturity and grace before God and humans, to whom be the glory. And that's
A lot of overlap.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the story from Luke just ripped out and dropped in with this little, "Are you the mother?" Yeah, boy, you should count yourself lucky. Yeah.
Is he still 5 years old here?
No, he's 12 here. Yeah, he's 12 here. I left out a couple of the other stories. There's one where Joseph is working when he's 7. I didn't know how much time we would have or how much you guys would want to talk. Joseph is working in the wood shop, and he's making a bed, and he cut a piece too short. So Jesus pulled on the wood and lengthened it so he could use that piece and not waste it, and made a bed from it. So, yeah, that's right. It's a very handy.
That's where that saying, was it?
Measure twice, cut once. Yeah, right. You only had to measure once with Jesus. He'd stretch it if it was a problem. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, there are some other stories. I do think it's interesting that Jesus is never called Lord or Christ in any of this. He's just Jesus or the child. Other stories that aren't found in the oldest manuscript, but you can find them in other places. Jesus rides a sunbeam. Jesus resurrects dead fish, and Jesus plays with lions. So those, we don't have those there, but they were added. I mean, we don't have them in the early manuscripts, but they were added a little bit later. They're fairly self-explanatory, I think. Jesus rides a sunbeam is up there with wheels, barrels, smoke, I think. So that's one of the reasons I think he does. As I said, more attention to Joseph than many of the Gospels. Not exactly favorable, pulling on Jesus' ear and not, yelling at him for killing the neighborhood kids, which I think he probably should. But Mary is always portrayed positively. Nobody ever talks bad about Mary.
So are there a lot of passages that talks about Mary? But
Just the ones that we saw. There's just a couple. Yeah, go get water and she always seems to show some understanding, or at least not judgment, like Joseph is. Stop it. Quit killing the neighborhood kids. Which I'm on Joseph's side of that argument, but to each their own, I guess. Contemporary impact. Anne Rice wrote Christ the Lord Out of Egypt in 2005, which included stories from this gospel, and it was made to a film in 2016, starring Nicolas Cage as Joseph, interestingly enough, called The Young Messiah. And in 2025, there was a psychological horror film called The Carpenter's Son, based on this gospel almost completely. So, actually, that's the one that might have Nicolas Cage in it. Might be The Carpenter's Son that has Nicolas Cage. I don't remember who's in The Young Messiah. But, yeah. I know Nicolas Cage is in one of those kooky movies. So there's still some, like I said, it's a question people want to know the answer to. What was Jesus like as a child? So, it was a driving question back all these years ago, and apparently it wasn't great, really. So as you think about this is what I wanted to say. I wanted to leave some time for talking about this. What questions are they trying to answer in this? Why do you write a gospel where Jesus looks like this? What is it? What is this speaking to? What need is this speaking to? Yes, Bob.
I think it was more what he did, or the powers that he had.
Okay.
Not the way he conducted. In other words, there's this big gap.
Mm-hmm.
The earlier Gospels didn't mention it.
Right.
And to add credibility, not even credibility, to build the story of Jesus was God in the beginning.
Yep.
Jesus was divine the whole time.
Okay.
He always was, he always will be. So they're establishing that he had supernatural powers
Right.
even as a child. But I would suggest that he wasn't referred to as the Christ or anything else because of what we have in the canonical Gospels when Jesus, or at least in the story at the wedding at Cana.
Right.
It's not my time yet.
Right.
established himself.
Waited for his moment as opposed, yeah, maybe so. That this is filling in. I want to repeat this for the people at home who might not have heard you. So this is filling in the gaps for showing Jesus always as God and having godly powers, but not as Christ or Lord yet, as he's waiting for that right time to appear and be that person. Howie?
I think it does both too. It
Okay.
also shows the human side.
You're saying it shows a human side as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because,
A little too human. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, he brought him back, so that makes it better. At least, I don't know about Zeno, though. Of course, see, Zeno wasn't his fault. Zeno fell off the roof, and he brought him back to cellar, but it wasn't his fault. So
But as an adult, he cursed the fig tree. And then
a lot of people point that out, Bob, that there is an echo here of cursing the fig tree and cursing the parents or the boy that bumped into him, offended him. Yeah, he was 5 though, and I don't think that. And there are some stories, and this is the other, it's so funny because people want to try and reconcile. The people for whom this story was important, they want to reconcile these stories, but it doesn't look very Jesus-like in these stories. And so they will do things like, well, the boy that bumped into him had been mocking him, and he jumped on him. And so they start padding out the story to justify why, and then the parents, well, they just went with it as well, and that's why they're struck blind. And even then, he forgives them later on after that third teaching. So, I mean, they try, it's so funny to try and reconcile, right, this who Jesus is that they see in the Gospels with this story that they want to hold on to, that they've been told, oh, this is him as a kid. And some people, we have our canons sometimes. And for a lot of people, for probably 1,000 years of the church, they thought of Jesus as a kid like this. I mean, these are the stories that were circulating. Even when the priest said no, even when Irenaeus says no, you can't control what folks believe. And I think that there was an element of this. And so you see them sort of struggling to try and answer. And I think some of the additions are trying to do that. They try to, pad out that the kid was a jerk and that, the parents were doing the same thing. And you see the high priest thing at the beginning. So all that stuff. Yeah.
I like the story because it shows that Jesus was not born in a mature state.
Okay.
He went through the whole development cycle as a human being would.
Right.
And so you see how a 5-year-old man should be like that and developed, not very social, kind of playful, whimsical, and death is not really a thing that they understand fully grasp
Yeah.
as a 5-year-old. Because if he was born with the maturity of his adult, then
Right.
it would be really weird to almost be like a dwarfism.
Interestingly, if you look, oh yeah, Caleb is saying that he appreciates the story as it shows Jesus as coming to terms with growing and maturing in the notion of being a human being as well. If you look at some of the medieval pictures of Jesus, some of you may have seen this. If you ever see infant Jesus sitting on Mary's lap, and he looks like a 40-year-old man, right? Have you seen this? And he is drawn, and the technical term for this, he's drawn as a homunculus. A homunculus is just a fully formed human, a small, fully formed human. And so he's drawn as a homunculus, and he's drawn exactly as you're saying he's not. He's drawn as a fully formed adult, as he is, understanding everything, and that's a theological statement, right? He's born as a grown-up, is basically their idea. And you're right, the Gospel of Thomas is pushing against that. It's saying, no, Jesus had to come to terms with what it was to have this power. Jesus had to come to terms with what it meant to be God, and had to grow into that understanding of what that was. So I mean, that's really what the story is telling, I think, is exactly what you're saying. You saw it, I think, is exactly what they're trying to say.
That story where he was 12 years old and he lost in the temple.
Right, correct.
You can tell it almost shows he wasn't quite fully adult yet.
He didn't have regard for his parents' wishes in that moment. He stayed in the temple behind. Yeah, that's not quite this, but I hear you. Yes.
Like the gradient.
You can see it from there, maybe. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think it's significant that this gospel includes that story, right? Where he seems, and that after that story, he followed his parents. So it seems like after that story, he gets it, at least here. To the ending, the way it phrases the ending. Let me get there. How did he say it? Followed and was obedient to his parents. Yes, that was it. So that sense in which this moment in the temple is sort of the moment where he finally fully understands what it means and actually does what they want and is obedient to them from here on.
And that part was also taken from Luke.
Yeah, yeah,
But doesn't the Bible always say that Jesus was without sin?
yes.
I'm counting the sins.
These are sins? You think you think cursing a kid for bumping into you is a sin, do you? I'm not disagreeing.
You mean killing them?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's true. Killing him and blinding the parents. You think
Yeah, I
that
just
you think God wouldn't be favorable in that? Yeah. I think you're probably right.
Story made me worry that it damaged God's perfect image as Savior.
Right.
Yeah.
That is not widely popular.
Right.
Because then now is he really Savior? Can he save anybody?
Right. Well, but again, I think get back to remember context, right? Context. And think about the world these people are in. Think about the emperors. Think about the kings. Think about the governors. Think about the people they see who hold power and the attitudes those people have. And then that, of course, is projected onto the divine, right? That's how they understand God. That's how they see God. The same sort of capricious, whimsical, fascist God that these, I would say feckless, but I end up saying fascist, same thing in this case, that they have just project that image onto the divine as well. And the truth of the matter is, it's not far the way a lot of people see God today. A mean God that's just looking at you, waiting for you to screw up to zap you with a lightning bolt. I mean, that picture of the divine is one that is terribly unhealthy and remarkably common. And is holdover from, in many ways, medieval pictures of the divine. You know, grace. I think on some levels, I think I've said it many times. It is this psychological projection of we could never be that graceful. We could never be that loving. We can't possibly imagine anybody else could either. And so we just assume that God is just a big one of us that is holding grudges and ready to shoot us with a lightning bolt, as opposed to a God that we see in Matthew 5 that says, look, the sun shines on the just and the unjust. The rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous. What you do does not change the way I feel about you. That's what God says. And yet, that's how we live sometimes. That's how we see it sometimes. And so I think a lot of that is what's being wrestled with in this gospel, is an inability to process a wideness in God's mercy that we don't have in ours. Bob?
It's so tragic that so many people are taught about this other God, this
The big mean bully God.
vengeful
Yes.
lightning bolt,
Yes.
waiting for you to mess up.
Right.
And instead of looking and trying harder to know who God is, they say, I don't want to have anything to do with religion because
Right.
That's a shame. Because that's why many people leave the church.
Yes.
I don't believe that God's waiting for me
To screw up. I don't believe in this.
Something wrong
Right.
with the Bible. So everything you're saying is wrong, and I don't want to hear any of it.
Right. Right.
That's the God that most Christians reflect.
It is. That's true. That is a God that Christians reflect. That's a God churches often reflect. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
starting.
a lot more judgment within Christian circles often than in secular circles.
That's true. Well, I mean, when the church first came to America, the focus was not the successful church. The focus was the holy church. And the church decided who was holy and who wasn't. So much so that you could be a pregnant woman who was accused of witchcraft and put out into the wilderness in the winter. And if it wasn't for, Rhode Island, probably would have died, right? I mean, people were focused on, purity. I mean, they were Puritans. That's kind of where the name comes from. They were, and being the pure church, the holy church. So yeah, Jennifer's right. I mean, we've got judgmentalness woven into our DNA sometimes.
Is Rhode Island Roger Williams?
Yes. Yeah, Roger Williams was the one who
When I
prepared.
think any movie that portrays that time, the two words that come to me are God-fearing.
God-fearing.
It's always God.
Yeah, it's God-fearing. Well, the God they're talking about needs to be feared.
It's God-fearing.
Right. Right. Well, and part of that's an unfortunate translation of the King James and an unfortunate misunderstanding of culture and what's meant by fear. I mean, it's fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but it's fear of the Lord in the sense of the fear of your kindergarten teacher. It's a fear of the Lord as in a recognition of position. Fear of the Lord is God, I'm not God. That's all fear of the Lord is. But we are happy to make it much more explainable, to make God fearful. No, we're fearful. Scary. Do we have a noun for the thing that's fiery? Is there scary is what we got, but I kind of like the cadence of another fear word. I don't have that, do I? Oh well. God. So we make a God who's scary, so it's much easier to understand being afraid instead of having to talk about, these healthy things. Yeah, judgment exists, and I think that's what's coming out of this. I do. I think this is a reflection of what Caleb is saying, right? A Jesus who has to come to understand, and I also think the subtext of a God that is capricious and feckless and mean, that people project onto the divine. Yeah, I really do. Yeah. A wild story, though, isn't it?
Yes.
So, any other thoughts or questions? Thought you might talk more this evening. Well, you talked good a little bit. That's good.
There's one story that you didn't talk about it here, which I really liked, where he saved a baby,
Yes,
brought the baby back to life.
correct.
And then the next sentence is, and then he went out and he played with the other children.
Right.
And so I think that they're trying to show that there is the funds, the play, the
Yeah.
enjoyment.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason that they did that, you said this was Greek,
Yep.
and didn't the Greeks expect 5-year-olds to go become soldiers and
I mean, there was a sense of growing up fast. Yeah.
fast, and so this had him still being a kid.
A kid at that point. Yeah, maybe so.
I mean, and then sort of as opposed to the Jewish that had the bar mitzvahs and the bat mitzvahs.
Yeah.
Where they're, third.
Today I'm a man. Yeah.
Yeah, today I'm so.
Yeah.
I guess what surprised me on that, so we go to the second part of my question, which there was no question so far.
Yeah, that's okay.
Except about the Greeks.
Sure, yes, yeah.
So the second part is the Jewish people say, today I am a man,
Right.
today I am, and
Right.
it's all. Would they have expected children? Would they say playing in the mud, playing in the water is Sabbath work?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean,
Well, you don't have to answer it because she said yeah.
I don't know.
Answer it for
I mean, yeah, yes, they could have easily been accused of that. Yes. I mean, because anybody would have. I think that I think it's trying to pick up on those gospel ideas of Jesus is doing something that would be innocuous and someone accuses him of violation of the minutia of the law. So I think that's what it's trying to parallel there. And so I don't know how deep in the woods I want to get on, this is and this isn't, as much as I want to say it's trying to write an homage to the gospel story of Jesus healing on the Sabbath and getting in trouble for it. So just trying to pay
I
that.
think we've already said this, but I want to say it explicitly.
Say it again.
It certainly shows Jesus in the mystery of Jesus being fully divine and fully human at the same time.
Okay.
In a weird way, but I think it accomplishes that.
Okay, so you would read this as sort of I would almost say an orthodox Christology of Jesus is both divine and human in this story.
Fully.
Okay. Okay.
The divinity and his magical powers,
Right.
and his humanity and his pettiness.
And his learning how to work those magical powers.
Yeah. What he does with them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess I'd not thought of it that way. I think you might be right. Because for me, it's such a high Christology. I wonder aloud about this. I mean, the first 6 of the first 7 church councils from 300 to 600 are all wrestling with how is Jesus fully God and fully human, right? That's the one question for the first 700 years of the church that people are trying to answer. And anytime anybody answered it, they were declared a heretic and kicked out of the church.
I'm still wrestling with it too.
Yeah, well, good, because if you ever come up with an answer, you usually are called a heretic and kicked out of the church. Because, some theologian would say, well, it's like oil and water, and they go, heretic, and kick him out. And so the next guy would come and go, it's like oil and wine, and they say, heretic, and they kick him out of the church. And so, I mean, always, it's like a shamrock. No, it's not. And so they do this whole fight for the church for years. And I wonder, right, 2nd century, I wonder if the challenge for them, that close, is not trying to understand Jesus as a human, but how is Jesus divine? I think that close to the life of Jesus, they would have at least a better understanding of people that would tell stories and pass stories down of a human Jesus who ate and drank and slept, and that the real wrestling match was how in the world was that divine? And I wonder, I've always thought less about it showing him human and more about making sure you understood he was divine, because I felt like the closer you are to Jesus, that's the harder question to answer. For us, the harder question is how is he fully human? Because we seem to have been okay with, okay, yeah, he's divine like God, got it, no problem. And so for us, Jesus with acne or body odor is hard for us to process on this. Whereas I think closer to Jesus, they might have had an easier time with that, personally. But I don't know. I don't know, right? That's my mind as it wanders on these things.
I think we also have to keep in mind, we have an entire cottage industry of biblical fiction.
Yes.
That fills in the gaps for all of these.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is early fanfic. It absolutely is. That Jennifer was saying, we have a whole cottage industry for Christian fiction, filling in gaps, for telling stories about, telling stories about anybody. You want to tell stories about Rahab and Jericho. You want to tell stories about Melchizedek. You want to tell stories about whoever you want to tell stories about, right? You can find a book written in Christian fiction to fill in the gaps. And so, yeah, this is just early fanfic is all it is in many ways. But people like it.
This is the doubting Thomas. This is the,
Probably.
so, having, lived with Jesus,
Yeah.
Jesus didn't want people to know he was Jesus, the Christ, in
Oh,
a lot of cases.
In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, yes.
It's not time.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's true. In John as well. That's true on that level.
Don't brag about
Right.
it. Don't do it.
Right.
We're here, without using the word Jesus, that's all Jesus is doing.
Is showing off.
He's saying, I'm it.
That's true. He does.
And of course, the other part is this, the kind of godly love that he showed.
Right.
That other people had a hard time doing, and then he surely doesn't show any of it.
He doesn't show that here. No.
Repeat what Nancy said.
That I doubt it. Thomas, in the Gospels, Jesus is reticent to reveal his nature and who he is. And in this gospel, that's all he's doing, is showing off with powers and everything. And not showing the love that we know of God from the Gospels in here. He does bring everybody back, but and fix everything. But
No,
yeah,
that does not.
that probably doesn't count. You're right. That probably doesn't count. So yeah.
But also, like in modern times, we have a number of Christian leaders who want to only portray Jesus as warrior Jesus.
Yes.
That alpha male who's
Yes.
and is going to beat you up. And,
Right.
And doesn't take any slack from anybody.
That's right.
So it's like it's a heresy that persists even in portraying an adult Jesus.
Yes.
Where we have lots of stories that are possible.
Yeah, and you say that, and I'm not lying to you when I thought, how is it that those people haven't picked the verse out of here that says, if you don't understand the alpha, how could I teach you the beta? I'm just like, they should love that, right? It's a shame it's non-canonical for them, because they would love that stuff. Yeah, you're exactly right, that there is a misrepresentation of the character of who Jesus is, even though we have canonical gospels showing it. Even though the Sermon on the Mount is canon, we still don't accept that.
And he willingly goes to the cross.
Willingly goes to the cross. Yes.
If he was warrior Jesus, he
Yep.
wouldn't have had to die.
Yes. I've told the story about Six-Pack Jesus before. Yeah, about the church I was an interim at, and someone had painted this picture of Jesus walking on the water with his shirt down, and he's ripped. We're talking Planet Fit, CrossFit. He's been doing CrossFit, and has this 8-pack, right, walking across the water. And the boys always called it, we going to the Six-Pack Jesus Church? I was like, no, I'm going to Six-Pack Jesus Church this week. So they were 8 and 9 at the time. So anyway, good thoughts, good conversations. Not Jesus, not in the Bible, not Jesus. I just felt like we should say that. Christian fanfic that we're not going to endorse. So, all right, so next week, we're still in May next week. So we will look at another gospel next week. Probably Proto-Evangelium of James, another early guy. I really like it just for the significance and the impact it's had later. It's one that's non-canonical, but more practically canonical than you would think. And so we'll talk about that next week. So have a great holiday weekend, and I will see you on Wednesday.